border crossing. The rusty red minivan looked more pitiful than most. Officer Kofi checked the plates with his flashlight. West fucking Virginia? Good Lord, they'd traveled a spell. Kofi didn't think he'd ever met anyone from there. He was surprised the place still existed. Most of the folks waiting to cross that evening hailed from upper Midwest, trying to sneak in before the first monster blizzard. So far, there'd been no snow, but the average temp had been flirting with 0 for the past 3 weeks, and it was barely September. Every year, the cold came earlier, and the storms grew worse. There were 4 people in the minivan, all of their haz suits cheap and in questionable repair. A man was driving with a very pregnant woman sitting in the passenger seat. An older woman sat in back, most likely the man's mother, judging by their looks. A kid, maybe preschool age, was leaning against the old woman. Hard to tell whether it was a girl or boy. They looked terrified, whoever they were. A family, Kofi thought, trying to escape from one toxic wasteland to a slightly better one, from one frying pan to another. He motioned for the driver to put down his window. "Welcome to Crescent Region, sir," he said, making an extra effort to be pleasant, since his supervisor had recently chided him for sounding like an android. "License, registration, and reason for travel, please." The man reached into his inside door pocket and pulled the required papers. Kofi noticed his face shield was cracked, and the pregnant woman's face shield was either fogged up or morphed to opaque. He couldn't be sure. Kofi examined the man's license. His name was Abram Ruby. The minivan was an ancient turn-of-the-century model with tags due to expire in a couple of weeks. Reason for travel. A letter from Flowers Energy stated Mr. Ruby and family were relocating to Crescent Region so he could work on one of their offshore platforms in the Gulf. He was due to report to work in 2 days. "I see you're cutting it down to the wire, Mr. Ruby," Kofi said. "You're to report to the rig in 2 days. Mr. Flowers don't like folks to be tardy." "I got here as soon as I could, sir," said Mr. Ruby. He had a southern accent, thicker than Kofi's. As if such a thing were possible. His vowels were harder, though. "Traveling's not exactly easy these days. I assume you'll be headed to the company housing in 10 Zone East." "Nope," said Mr. Ruby, smiling strangely. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his haz-suit's breast pocket and gave it to Kofi. "I've got one of those golden tickets." Kofi examined the letter. It was from the National Dome Lottery and stated, using 100 words too many, that Mr. Ruby's number had finally come up and he and his family were entitled to a 2-bedroom unit in Dome District 10 South, the poorest section of the Dome. Most likely the unit would be smaller than a shoebox, but at least the family would have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, an important perk with a baby on the way. Kofi looked for the official metallic hologram in the bottom right corner and scanned it with his handheld. Yep, the letter was legit and unexpired. Too bad Kofi was going to have to break this man's heart. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ruby. This letter's no good." "What?" "Mr. Ruby," Kofi repeated. "This letter's no good now." "That can't be. The reservation ain't expired. I double-checked the date before we left." Kofi took a deep breath. According to the recent Supreme Court decision, Liberty City versus the United States, regional rights trump any federal ruling pertaining to Dome residency. Okay, now he sounded like a robot, but he figured that was the kindest way to deliver the bad news. "I'm just a drone. My hands are tied. Don't shoot the messenger." Mr. Ruby took a deep breath of his own. "Excuse me for cussing, sir," he began, his reedy voice trembling, "but what the fuck's name are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that here in Crescent Region, your letter from the National Dome Lottery is null and void. Crescent Dome Board makes the rules, and what they say goes." "Well, ain't that a kick in the nuts? What am I supposed to do now? I've got a baby on the way. I can't live out in the muck. Why the hell do you think I left West Virginia?" "Mr. Ruby," Kofi wanted to say, "we've got hundreds of babies born in the muck here every day. Don't see why you think you're special." What he actually said was, "The only way into the Dome for you is to get a sponsor. Flowers Energy has a block of units in Dome District 10 South, but usually they're reserved for riggers who've been in region for a while." That's when Kofi heard a voice. A small, indignant voice. The voice of a child. "That's not fair." The odd thing was he didn't hear this voice with his ears. It was pinging around inside his head like a thought, except the thought wasn't his own. He glanced at the child in the back seat. They had been cowering next to the old woman, but now they were sitting bolt upright, flashing him a stank eye for the ages. "Excuse me," Kofi asked as gently as he could. "Did you say something?" "You better not lay a hand on my son." Yet another voice pinging in his head. But Kofi recognized this one as Mr. Ruby's. What the hell was going on? "I didn't say anything, mister," the boy replied with a slight, devilish grin. "I must have been thinking loud." "Lillian," scolded the old woman, "what did I tell you about messing with people like that?" Lillian lowered his head. "That it isn't nice." "Okay, so what do you do now?" "Apologize," the boy whined. The old woman gave him a swift punch in the arm when he appeared to hesitate. "I'm sorry, Officer Kofi, for throwing my thoughts into your head. I should have asked permission first." Then Mr. Ruby apologized. "I'm sorry too, officer. I'm just very protective of my boy. I'm sure you understand." Kofi didn't know what to think. It wasn't like he hadn't seen people with the gift before. His neighbor, Miss Willa, had the sight, but to get her thoughts in your head, she had to touch you first. Also, she said her gift didn't show itself until her late teens. This Lillian kid couldn't have been older than 5, and he could toss around thoughts like it was nothing. Kofi bet he'd be holy hell as a teen. The driver in the car behind the minivan started honking and yelling. "Keep a lid on it, asshole," Kofi yelled back. "We're moving as fast as we can." Meanwhile, Mr. Ruby and his clan needed a sponsor and a place to stay pronto, or else they risked being booted from region. "I'll tell you what, Mr. Ruby, I'm going to put myself down as your sponsor. That and your letter from Flowers Energy ought to be enough to get you through." Mr. Ruby hung his head. "Thank you," he said wearily. Then he added, "I guess." "Listen, sir, I'm really sorry about the letter. I really am. But the rules are the rules. I don't make them, and I can't break them, or it's my job, and I've got a couple kids of my own. I'm sure you understand." "Where are we supposed to live?" Mr. Ruby pleaded. He was desperate, on the edge of tears. "Oh, fuck," Kofi thought. "Please don't start bawling. My shift just started." "I'll find you someplace, I promise. More than likely it won't be inside the dome, but it won't be as far out as 10th Zone either. That place is a pit. I'll give you your key card and meet you in decon. Now exit to the right, please." He pointed the way. At first, Mr. Ruby wouldn't move, and Kofi feared he might have a situation on his hands. But then the kid spoke up. "Daddy, I read him. He's fine. He'll take good care of us." "Okay, Lily," Mr. Ruby said, somewhat relieved. "I'll trust you." He turned into the lane for the decon station. Damn, thought Kofi as he watched the minivan pull away. That Lillian kid was something else. Miss Willa could also read people, but she had to be holding your hand at least. And you could feel when she did it too. It was a disturbing sensation, like ants tap dancing on your bare skin. But when the Ruby boy read him, Kofi felt nothing. He wondered if the whole Ruby clan was that strong. Kofi radioed his supervisor, "Permission to leave my post, sir. I need to help a family through decon." "Reason?" "Special circumstances, sir. The woman's extremely pregnant. Plus, there's a young child." "So, we've got Batista working Decon Center 3. She's good with women and children." "No," Kofi insisted. "It needs to be me. I need to firm up some details with them." "What details?" demanded the supervisor. "Nothing shady, I hope." "No, nothing shady, sir. I just promised the kid special I'd meet them there." "Okay, you got back up on your lane?" "Yeah, Clark and Blackstone are here." Permission granted. Kofi was glad to get away from the entry lanes, not that the border decon station was much better. He didn't care if Batista was on duty or not. Decon wasn't just about stepping in a chamber to zap all the contaminants from your gear. It was also about humiliation. During the medical examination, they stripped, poked, and prodded you and asked all manner of invasive questions. It was like going through the old DMV, except it was people, not cars. Mr. Ruby had just had his golden ticket shot full of lead. Kofi wasn't sure he'd pull through decon with his sanity intact. And then there was that matter of Kofi promising the Ruby clan a place to live. Why the hell had he done that? Just because that freaky munchkin threw a thought in his head as casually as tossing a random piece of garbage? Or maybe he'd just had it with making people needlessly suffer. He'd certainly want no child of his entering the world by way of the 10th Zone. Might as well birth the kid in a garbage dump. And the Ruby clan had journeyed so damn far. I mean, all the way from West Virginia in that hunk of tin. They deserved better. The red minivan was nowhere near the decon entrance when Kofi passed by, so he decided to take the long way around and make a phone call. "Hello, Father Avery?" "Yes," replied the tentative voice. "You've reached the Crescent Parish New Catholic Priory." "Father Avery, it's me, Israel Kofi." "Izzy? I volunteered at your homeless shelter back in high school." "Oh, Izzy," the priest exclaimed. "How the hell are you? Haven't heard from you in a month of Sundays. You still working the border?" "Yes, Father. That's kind of what I'm calling about. Do you have any room at the inn? I've got a family here whose golden ticket fell through." Dang! Kofi could just see the elderly priest shaking his head. How long had they been waiting for their ship to come in? "Don't know, didn't ask, but they came all the way from West Virginia. Looks like they might have sold everything they had to get here. There's a woman who looks like she's about to have a baby any day now." "West Virginia? Didn't know folks still lived out there. I thought they'd fracked the whole thing to pieces ages ago. How many of them are there?" "4, soon to be 5. There was a long pause. Kofi prayed the answer wouldn't be no. Otherwise, the Rubies would have to bunk at his place. That would be 7 people crammed into his tiny cottage. His 2 teenage sons already fought enough. He couldn't imagine a preschooler and a newborn added to the mix. Let's see," the priest began. "Homeless shelter's full. So's the halfway house. The only place I can offer is the storm shelter under the priory. The decor's late medieval dungeon, but we've got enough beds and clean linens, and there's a kitchen down there. And it's private." "Thank you, Father." Kofi was overjoyed. At least he'd have some good news to share. He was just about to congratulate himself for being such a wonderful person when he stopped in his tracks. "Father, there's something I ought to tell you about this family." Deep breath. "Oh, and what is that?" "I think they all have the sight, the boy especially." Another deep breath, followed by an uncomfortably long pause. Father Avery belonged to the liberal wing of the church, and rumor had it he was even a member of the radical secret society, the Knights of the New Star. But generally, the nominally Christian religions had an uneasy relationship with those who had the gift. The more fundamentalist sects believed the sight had something to do with the devil and aggressively shunned those who had it. Catholicism didn't officially profess a problem with it, and most Catholics were fairly blasé, so long as you didn't flaunt your superpowers. Still, even some Catholics subscribed to the devil theory. In the Crescent, the only traditions that took the sight in stride were voodoo and Santeria. Kofi wasn't sure where his old mentor fell along that spectrum. Maybe one person with the sight would be okay, but a whole family of people that could peer inside your soul? No thanks. "How old is the kid?" the priest finally asked. Kofi breathed a sigh of relief. At least Father hadn't said no outright. "Real young. I don't think he's 5 yet." "Fascinating. They don't appear to be grifters, do they?" "No, sir, the father's got a job on a Flowers oil rig." "And Old Man Flowers didn't sponsor him?" "Apparently not. Probably because when the father got the job offer, the National Dome Lottery was still worth something. And Flowers is a cheap bastard. Except when it comes to buying judges. I'll bet you my eye-tooth Flowers was the baron who bought the justice who was the deciding vote in the case that gutted the lottery." Another pause. Kofi sent up a quick prayer. "Please, Father, say yes." "I'll take them," the priest finally said. "Some folks here might have a problem with that, but what they don't know at first won't hurt them." Kofi just laughed. "Thank you, Father. I owe you one." "No skin off my teeth, Izzy. I do the work of the Lord." By the time Kofi got off the phone with Father Avery and made his way back to the decon station, the Ruby clan had stripped down to their undies and were waiting for him in Decon Center 3. Officer Batista met Kofi at the door of Exam Room 1 and handed him the medical history questionnaire. "Well, Kofi, they're all yours, and remember, we're watching you." "Just because I sponsored them in a pinch doesn't mean I'm going to cheat," Kofi said. "I was implying no such thing," she huffed, which, of course, meant she was. Batista might have been good with women and children crossing the border, but with her co-workers, she had a rep as a backstabber extraordinaire. Kofi paused to collect himself, then opened the door. The first thing that struck him about the Rubies, now that they were standing up and out of full gear, was they were way taller than he imagined. All except for Lillian, that is. He was small for his age. Abram Ruby had to be at least 6'4". The grandmother, her name was Crystal Bannon Ruby, according to the form, and the wife, Sabrina Charles Ruby, stood close to 6 feet. They weren't tall and broad, though. Abram Ruby was thin and wiry like a marathon runner. The expectant Sabrina resembled a beanpole that had swallowed a bowling ball, and Crystal, with her prominent nose and waist-length, scraggly gray hair, reminded Kofi of a fairy tale witch. Most had coffee-brown skin, but they didn't look black, Mexican, Native American, or anything Kofi could put his finger on. The boy was an odd mix of pretty and tough. He was so skinny he'd probably disappear if he turned sideways, and significantly paler than the rest of his family. His wavy brown hair was unkempt and hung past his shoulders. He was going to have to get a haircut before he went to school, or else he was going to get his ass beat for looking too much like a girl. And he'd have to change his name, thought Kofi. Who the fuck would name a boy Lillian? Lillian wore antique-style glasses with lenses at least a quarter-inch thick, which meant when he was sitting in the family minivan with his glasses off and his Has-suit helmet on, he was probably close to legally blind. His face displayed a kaleidoscope of fear, bristling attitude, and wide-eyed curiosity. Lillian looked like he could be a handful, but thankfully at the moment, he was well-behaved. "Well, I have good news," Kofi announced. "Y'all got a place to stay. It's not in the dome, but it ain't in 10 Zone either. A priest I knew back in high school, Father Avery, is going to put you up in the storm shelter under the Priory in 6 Zone. It ain't fancy, but there's a kitchen down there and it's private." Abram and Lillian looked at each other and smiled. Lillian looked quite pleased with himself for reading Kofi correctly. "Thank you," Abram said. Sabrina spoke next. "Are you sure he's going to be okay with us living there? I mean..." "I told him everything, ma'am," Kofi said. "You told him about me?" Lillian's plaintive voice pinged in his head again, although this time Kofi didn't think he was doing it on purpose. The boy was just anxious, scared to death he'd ruined things for his family. "Yes, Lillian," he assured him. "I told him about you." He cleared his throat. "Now comes the unpleasant part." He explained the medical history questionnaire. He'd interview them each separately, although Lillian, since he was a minor, could choose the one adult he'd like to accompany him. He warned them some of the questions could get pretty personal, but tell the truth anyway. 'Cause if you lie, it'll come back to bite you in the ass. He warned them the interview would be recorded. "This is to keep an eye on me as well as you." After the questions came the doctor and the physical examination, one person at a time, except for Lillian, who was allowed one adult present. "Oh, and y'all can sit down. In fact, please do. You're making me nervous." They sat in unison. Abram Ruby volunteered to go first, since A was first in the alphabet. Plus, he wanted to get the unpleasantness over as quickly as possible. "Can Lillian go in with me?" "Sure," Kofi said, "if you don't mind him hearing your answers. Ain't nothing my boy don't know about me that he can't find out on his own." Yeah, I bet, Kofi thought. That was one of the disadvantages of having a kid who could literally read you like a book. Little white lies were out of the question. Abram entered the interview booth first. Lillian followed. Kofi found it odd Abram didn't carry his son because the boy was definitely small enough, or at least hold his hand, especially when he claimed to be so protective of him. They sat in separate chairs. Lillian had to climb into his. He struggled at first, but after Kofi gave him a quick boost, he was fine. That's when Kofi noticed the boy's eyes were different colors. The left was a strangely intense blue, while the right was a golden brown. Kofi began Abram's interview without introduction or fanfare. That's how you were supposed to do it, according to the handbook. Rapid-fire questions, bang, 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 your voice betraying little to no emotion. It was one of the few times when you were supposed to sound like a robot. The interview was as much about intimidation as it was about gathering information. We know you're not worthy, and these questions will prove it. Abram Ruby held his own. He was used to things like this. Most who lived outside the domes usually were, even Kofi, who was in a position of relative authority. Every day, you had to justify your right to exist, and that job was never done. Thankfully, Abram Ruby was astonishingly healthy. Except for some bouts with asthma as a child, he was as healthy as a horse. Pretty impressive considering he hailed from one of the most toxic places on the continent. Kofi turned his attention to Lillian. Kofi always found it strange that minors were required to have separate interviews. Why not just ask the parents? But sometimes kids hid things from their parents that might negatively impact their health. Exploring dead buildings contaminated with industrial waste or worse, drug use, sexual activity. So it was better to ask. Although, the kids were also more likely to lie with an adult present. Kofi figured it was just more intimidation over information. Before Kofi could open his mouth, Lillian had a request. "Sir, is it all right if my father leaves the room?" Surprisingly, Abram didn't seem the least bit surprised or flustered by this. Kofi hesitated, although he wasn't sure why, probably because the boy caught him off guard. "Lillian, that's really against the rules. I could get in trouble." "Why? There's something I need to tell you, and we need to be by ourselves." Kofi glanced towards Abram, silently pleading for help. "But if we're alone, someone might say I tried to hurt you. That wouldn't be good for me, and it might not be good for you." "I know you won't hurt me. That's why I want to help you." Kofi asked Abram, "Do you have any idea what he could be talking about?" "He wants to repay you for your kindness to our family." "I don't understand." "Trust us," Abram said. So, against his better judgment, Kofi let Abram leave and stand just outside the door. Kofi propped it open slightly, or else Abram wouldn't have been able to hear anything. "If Batista sees this tape, I'm dead." Kofi settled into his chair and was just about to ask Lillian the first question when Lillian said, "Officer Kofi, you're sick. I could feel it when I read you in the car, and when you got me in the chair, I felt it then." "I don't understand," Kofi said. "May I put my thoughts in your head?" "Why?" "And would you believe it?" The freaky kid actually rolled his eyes at him. "So we can talk, silly." "Okay, I guess." "You don't have to talk either. I can hear you." "Oh, so you're saying you can hear what I'm thinking? So what am I thinking now?" Lillian recited a litany of his racing thoughts. "I hope this ends soon. This kid is freaking me out. I wonder why he has two different color eyes. Is that why he's almost blind?" Damn, the freakazoid was right. Someone should teach him how to play poker. He'd make a killing. Lillian giggled, clearly enjoying himself. But then he got serious. "There's a sore on your right arm near the inside of your elbow. You worry about it off and on. You were thinking about it when our car came up in line." Damn. Lillian was right about that too. It had been there for nearly 6 months. It didn't get any bigger or worse, but it didn't go away either. Kofi knew he should get it checked, but he was afraid. Sores that hung around that long never signified anything good, and what you didn't know for certain couldn't hurt you. Thing is, how could Lillian know that? Even Miss Willa couldn't read illness, even though Kofi had heard tales of people with the sight who could. But this boy was only... "I'm 5, Lillian said out loud. 5 years, 1 month, 3 days. Kofi quickly made a note of that on the questionnaire. Might as well look like he was doing something official. It might save his ass later. "I can make your sore go away," Lillian thought to him. "How?" asked Kofi. "I can talk to it, make the cells and the chemicals behave. It won't hurt." "What do I have to do?" asked Kofi. "Unzip your sleeve." Kofi was doubtful, but did as he was told. Lillian tumbled out of the chair, walked up to him, and placed both hands on Kofi's arm. Kofi could hear his heart pounding in his ears. "It's okay, Mr. Kofi. I won't hurt. Now breathe." The boy closed his eyes, so Kofi followed suit. He immediately saw a flash of electric blue. The color was so intense, so visceral, it nearly knocked him breathless. Kofi'd never seen a blue so deep or vital. Then he saw his arm as a camera might. He knew it was his arm, but he felt strangely detached from it, like it was a random object in a still life. Then he saw a microscopic view, a dense and pulsing latticework of cells, with each cell doing their part. The vision reminded him of the videos he watched in high school biology. And then everything stopped cold, even time. He heard the boy exhale in slow motion. It sounded like a mighty wave crashing back to sea. Afterwards, the cells sprang back into motion, but now they moved differently, slow and deliberate, like they were being guided by an outside force. Damn. Was the boy literally moving his cells around like chess pieces? "Hush," thought Lillian. "You're really loud. Be patient. I'm almost done." Kofi tried to quiet his mind as best he could, but he'd never been one for all that meditation stuff. He wondered what the tape would show. A little boy holding his arm as he fidgeted? "There," Lillian thought triumphantly. "It's all better." Kofi was almost afraid to open his eyes. He didn't know which outcome he feared most. Had Lillian really healed him? Or had the last few minutes been an elaborate mindfuck designed to rattle him? He finally braved a peek. The sore was gone. How? He asked. I don't know how, thought Lillian. I just can. Kofi tried to zip up his sleeve but couldn't because his hand was shaking too badly. After several attempts, he finally gave up. He thought about all the people on those religious shows who looked so unabashedly joyous after they were healed. Now he knew they were faking, because a real-life miracle was scary as shit. Don't worry, Mr. Kofi, Lillian thought. I can help you with your sleeve. The boy did the zipper as far as he could. Kofi finished the rest. Please don't be scared. I promise I didn't hurt you. He climbed onto a chair. His father returned and shut the door behind him. You can ask me my questions now, Lillian said, grinning as if nothing had happened. Oh yeah, the interview. Kofi had almost forgotten about it. Thank you, he whispered. Then he took a deep breath and continued with his job. It was after midnight when the Rubies finally finished intake. Kofi called Father Avery when he got the word the last Ruby had cleared medical so the priest could meet the clan at the station and guide them back to the priory. Despite the fact the mist was high and visibility was close to zero, Father Avery arrived at the border in plenty of time. Kofi was seated on a bench near the exit lanes, keeping an eye out for the Ruby-mobile, when the priest walked up and took a seat beside him. So, Izzy, the priest began, how are you doing? Tired. It's been a long, weird day. I imagine days at the border are often long and weird, especially when it gets busy like this. He gave Kofi's shoulder a friendly squeeze. Now, Izzy, how are you really? You sounded a little, well, odd over the phone. You having doubts about sponsoring this family? No, Father, replied Kofi. They deserve sanctuary. Then what is it? I broke protocol during the interview, and you know they record everything. I actually broke protocol escorting them through decon in the first place. So, you didn't do anything illegal, did you? No, but if they watch the footage of that interview, I'm dead. The boy, his name is Lillian, was alone in the interview booth with me for a few minutes. There's always supposed to be an adult in the room with a minor. I see, the priest said. And what was your reasoning behind your actions? Lillian requested it. His father approved. Do you usually grant a 5-year-old's request? Kofi didn't respond. At least, not with words. Instead, he broke down in tears. Izzy, are you okay? Father, there's something else I have to tell you about that boy. Not only does he have the gift in spades, he's a healer. Who knows? Maybe they all are. And before you start telling me I'm bonkers, I know I'm telling the truth because he healed me. Really? Yeah, I had this sore on my arm for ages. I know I should have gotten it checked, but I just didn't have time to be sick. I've got 2 boys to support. I just couldn't take the time. First, the priest began, I don't think you're bonkers. If the boy's got the sight as strong as you say he does, it's quite possible he could be a healer as well. Second, fuck protocol. Kofi laughed, and Father Avery laughed with him. Seriously, I think you did the right thing. It is never wrong to be kind. That's a simple truth we often forget these days. Kofi looked up to see the Ruby's red minivan exiting the center. He stood up and waved them over. You're telling me they drove all the way from West Virginia in that? Asked the priest. Uh-huh, Kofi replied. Huh, I guess there are such things as miracles. That was the last time Kofi saw the Ruby clan in the flesh. After the family got settled in the shelter, Father Avery and the new Catholics filed the paperwork to officially become the family's sponsor. Kofi breathed a sigh of relief. He couldn't handle the family full-time. Being responsible for his own 2 kids was more than enough. Luckily, no one at the Border Patrol had time to review his interview tape. About a week after the Rubies came through, an Arctic snap gripped upper Midwest, bringing a snowpocalypse. Snow was 7 feet deep in some places, and the frigid temps rivaled those in Siberia. Those who could claw their way out descended upon the border in droves, even though the Crescent's dreaded monsoon season had arrived with a vengeance. Snow or rain, take your pick. It sucked either way, but at least the rain was warmer. Even though Kofi never saw the Rubies again in person, he did call the Priory to check on them when he could. Abram Ruby made it to the oil rig in time. Sabrina had a healthy 6-pound baby girl and named her Raylene. Crystal read a lot and helped Sabrina with the children. Lillian also read voraciously and spent his leisure hours helping the priests in the priory's indoor garden. "He has an incredible green thumb," reported Father Avery. "He talks to plants and they listen. Something else, too. If it wasn't already obvious to you, the kid's a prodigy. We tested him for school and his IQ was off the charts. He'll probably be able to attend college at 9, and I'm sure every baron in the world will be chomping at the bit for a piece of him." "So he's a genius and he's got the sight?" said Kofi. "Double trouble." "Well, he comes by it honestly. Despite that backwoods accent, the Rubies aren't Hicks. Far from it. In a time long ago and far away, Abram, Sabrina, and Crystal were all senior government research scientists. Abram and Sabrina were geneticists. Crystal was a marine biologist." "What happened?" "No great mystery there. You know what happened? The Great Purge. And because some clueless assholes decided they hated science, Abram Ruby was now working on an oil rig where he risked injury or death daily. What a waste." Kofi shook his head. Sometimes he wondered how Father managed not to lose faith after all these years, especially when God allowed stuff like that to happen. "Oh, and Lillian wants to know if your arm's okay." Since Kofi was safely indoors, he unzipped the sleeve of his Haz suit to take a peek. The sore was still gone. Actually, he checked several times a day, just to make sure it all hadn't been a trick. Although, strangely, part of him hoped it was. Because truly, a miracle could be a frightening thing, especially when it happened to you. "Tell the boy I'm fine." "Will do." "And is he?" "What?" "Trust me, your heart picked the right time to bleed. Every day I thank God you didn't turn those people away." Approximately 6 months after the Rubies arrived in region, Father Avery called Kofi in a panic. Apparently the family had vacated the shelter without warning. Abram had left a note, effusively thanking the priests and Kofi for their kindness, but little else. "Where'd they go?" asked Kofi. "They claimed to have found a place, but damned if I know where it is. We'd been working to find them a permanent home, but so far, we'd found nothing." "Any idea why they would have left so suddenly?" "I think it might have had something to do with the boy. Some of the priests were uncomfortable." Kofi glanced at his arm again. Seriously, was he going to keep checking for the rest of his life? "Well, he is extraordinary, and from what little I know of him, he's a nice kid, but all that power in such a small package? It's scary when you think about it." The priest agreed. "Yep, Lillian and I had a heart-to-heart about that one night, and you know what he said? Sometimes I scare me too."
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.